know, the big banks screwing over their customers is nothing new. They routinely steered investors into junk mortgages and lousy investments that the banks knew were destined to fail. They hired day laborers, falsely gave them vice president titles to sign tens of thousands of fraudulent foreclosure documents so they could illegally kick millions of Americans out of their homes. And all the while, they paid their executives record-breaking salaries while sucking more and more cash out of their customers through fine print, hidden fees, and deceptive practices. This is nothing new, and we all know someone who has been directly affected by these abuses. Or we've heard about their stories in the news, like Paul Rousseau, who battled with Wells Fargo for years to keep this house, before finally giving up and shooting himself in the head. Or Sergeant Robert Bales, who received a lot of media attention after he went on a rampage, a shooting rampage in Afghanistan, murdering 17 Afghan civilians. What's talked about less in his story is that 3 days before the massacre, the Bank of America was close to foreclosing on the home Sergeant Bales and his wife owned in California with their 2 kids. And so she was forced to put it up for sale as the family was $50,000 underwater on their mortgage. Last year, Jefferson County, Alabama filed what at that time was the largest municipal bankruptcy in American history. Why'd they go broke? Well, basically because they were screwed by J.P. Morgan Chase and a slew of other banks, including Goldman Sachs. The city needed a new sewer system, which was estimated to cost $250 million. But thanks to a crummy financing deal with the Banksters and the corruption of a handful of elected officials, the cost of that sewer project swelled to $3 billion. Like the banks have done to so many unsuspecting homeowners, they sold the county a loan for the sewer that came with one of those adjustable or exploding interest rates. The county would pay a low interest rate that it could afford for a few years, and then the rate would just blow up. And surprise, that's exactly what happened. And when the rates went up, the city couldn't afford to make the payments on the loan, and they were wiped out by the millions of dollars in fees that the bank charged just to do the deal. So after furloughing city workers, cutting back on cops on the street, and turning off city lights just to pay off the banksters, Jefferson County eventually filed for bankruptcy, one of the first American counties officially looted by Wall Street. Other cities have followed. But now, one city is fighting back. Back in 1998, Goldman Sachs gave the city of Oakland a deal on its debt, saying it would convert the city's $187 million in debt to a new fixed rate of 5.6%. Over the next decade, though, thanks to the economy tanking, interest rates plummeted, meaning the city of Oakland is now paying a much higher interest rate than it would have before Goldman Sachs stepped in. Oakland has now paid $26 million more than it should have, and Goldman Sachs is demanding more than $15 million more in fees and penalties. But rather than rolling over and becoming a municipal slave to Wall Street, Oakland is fighting back. Last week, the Oakland City Council voted unanimously to terminate the bad deal the city had with Goldman Sachs. The resolution was simple, yet very strongly worded, saying if Goldman Sachs refuses to terminate the swap agreement without termination fees or penalty within 60 days, then they will be excluded from any future business with the city of Oakland. Basically, if Goldman Sachs doesn't do what the city says, then the city will pull all of its business out of the bank, which is a whole heck of a lot of money. It's a threat that the bank has to listen to, and a threat that other cities need to issue on their own. Point is, no city in America should be doing business with the banksters on Wall Street, who've proven time and time again they're only interested in looting. Instead, cities across the nation should be investing their assets in local banks and local credit unions, local institutions that actually care about and are derived from the communities that they belong to, rather than only caring about short-term profits for out-of-state shareholders. This has been a central theme coming out of the Occupy movement since last fall, calling on citizens and communities to move their money out of the big banks and into local credit unions. Millions of people have moved their money since last year, sucking billions of dollars of wealth out of the big banks and moving it into community banking institutions. And according to some reports on Wall Street, the big banks could lose as much as $185 billion by the end of the year if the defections continue. And if cities like Oakland get into the game, then Wall Street's giants will lose even more money. That's the best way to put an end to too big to fail banks, for all of us to walk away from these giant predatory institutions. Let's keep it up. Move your money and encourage your city to do the same, and transform banking back into the safe, useful, and boring industry it was for most of the 20th century.